Moving on, a senior official has indicated that the United Arab Emirates could work alongside other nations to help ensure the safety and security of the Strait of Hormuz.
Right now, as you're watching this video, the world's most important waterway, a stretch of ocean barely 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, is being used as a weapon. Ships can't get through, oil prices have exploded, billions of dollars in global trade are frozen, and one country, Iran, holds the key to what's called the world's biggest energy choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. But here's what nobody is talking about loudly enough. One small country has already built a way around it, quietly, strategically, over more than a decade. And right now, in 2026, as the rest of the world scrambles, that country is cashing in on possibly the most brilliant piece of geopolitical infrastructure on the planet. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you are going to look at a map of the Middle East in a completely different way. Let's start with the basics, because to understand what the UAE did, you first have to understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually is. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow body of water that sits between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. It's the only sea route connecting the Persian Gulf, where most of the Middle East's oil fields are, to the rest of the world. Every single day, around 20 million barrels of oil pass through that strait. Let that number sink in. That is roughly 1/5 of all the oil consumed on planet Earth, every day, through one narrow channel. According to the 2026 Strait of Hormuz crisis data, on March 1st and 2nd, no ships at all appeared in the strait. Major container shipping giants, Maersk, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, suspended transits completely. Tankers piled up on the Persian Gulf side going nowhere. Iran's IRGC said it would keep the strait closed specifically to ships from the US, Israel, and their Western allies. They targeted tankers, they struck ports, they jammed GPS signals across the Persian Gulf on March 4th, making navigation near impossible for vessels that were trying to use any alternative route. Oil prices went absolutely haywire. Brent crude, the global benchmark, spiked to nearly $120 a barrel at the start of the crisis, one of the sharpest energy price surges in modern history. The world woke up and asked, is there any other way to get this oil out of the Gulf? The answer was, barely, but the UAE had one.
Let me take you back to a decision the UAE made more than 15 years ago. In 2006, Abu Dhabi's International Petroleum Investment Company, known as IPEC, commissioned a bold infrastructure project. Their stated goal was to increase the security of supply and reduce dependence on oil transportation through the Strait of Hormuz. They were building an escape route before they even needed one. Construction began in March 2008 and was completed in March 2011. The pipeline was commissioned for commercial operations in June 2012. Chinese engineering giants, China Petroleum Engineering and Construction Corporation and the China Petroleum Pipeline Bureau built most of it. The offshore port facilities were built by Van Oord, a Dutch maritime contractor. The total cost? $3.3 billion. What did that $3.3 billion buy? The Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, known as AD-COP, or the Habshan-Fujairah pipeline. Here's what makes it special. AD-COP starts at the Habshan onshore oil fields deep inside Abu Dhabi's interior, far from the coast, far from any Gulf waterway. It then travels approximately 380 to 400 kilometers through deserts and over the Hajar Mountains, one of the most rugged terrains in the Arabian Peninsula, before emerging at the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. And Fujairah is the entire point. Because Fujairah sits outside the Strait of Hormuz, oil that arrives at Fujairah can be loaded directly onto tankers and shipped to Asia, Europe, or anywhere in the world without ever passing through the waters Iran controls. According to the UAE Embassy's official documentation, on any given ordinary day, the pipeline carries 1.5 million barrels of crude oil per day, representing over half of the UAE's total crude exports. Its maximum reported capacity stretches to 1.8 million barrels per day if needed. To give you a sense of scale, Clarkson Research Services, one of the world's leading shipping intelligence firms, calculated that tankers loading crude in Fujairah saved 2 full days of sailing time and up to $38,000 per voyage compared to going through Hormuz. That's how important the geographic bypass is. And it gets better. According to energy intelligence reporting from November 2024, ADNOC, Abu Dhabi's national oil company, had been planning a second pipeline from Jebel Dana on Abu Dhabi's Gulf Coast to Fujairah, adding another 1.5 million barrels per day of bypass capacity. That project was planned to open in 2026, the exact year the Hormuz crisis erupted. The UAE didn't stumble into this moment. They planned for it. Now let's talk about Fujairah, because this small emirate on the eastern coast of the UAE is arguably the most strategically important piece of real estate in the world right now. Before ADCOP was built, Fujairah was a relatively quiet port. After it, the UAE poured investment into turning Fujairah into a world-class energy hub. Today, Fujairah is the world's third largest bunkering port, meaning ships from all over the world come here to refuel. It has over 20 million barrels of crude and refined product storage capacity. It has a deep-water port capable of handling the world's largest supertankers. And it has long-term supply contracts with buyers in China, India, Japan, and South Korea, the biggest oil-importing nations on Earth. According to data from Vortexa, an energy intelligence company, loadings from Fujairah averaged around 1.1 million barrels per day in 2025, remaining above 1 million barrels per day into 2026. The port was already functioning as a critical node in global energy supply, even before the crisis hit. When the Strait of Hormuz closed, Fujairah went from important to irreplaceable almost overnight. As of March 12, 2026, according to Kepler senior oil analyst Naveen Das, speaking to CNBC, ADCOP was running at 71% capacity, with around 440,000 barrels of crude oil per day still headroom available. ADNOC could, if needed, temporarily push the pipeline to its maximum 1.8 million barrel per day rate. That spare capacity was suddenly the most valuable unused infrastructure on the planet. But here's where the story gets darker, and this is the part that shows you just how sophisticated Iran's strategic thinking really is. When Iran closed the strait, it didn't just block the main road, it went after the side roads too.
On March 3, 2026, debris from an intercepted drone caused a fire at Fujairah's oil terminal, damaging a JSW infrastructure storage tank with a capacity of nearly 3 million barrels. On March 14th, a drone attack caused large fires at UAE energy installations in Fujairah. Iran's IRGC had explicitly stated that UAE ports, docks, and military locations were legitimate targets. Iran's state media even warned residents and workers near Fujairah, Jebel Ali, and Khalifa ports to evacuate. The message was unmistakable: even your bypass route is not safe. On March 10th, ADNOC was forced to shut down its massive Ruwais refinery, one of the world's largest, located on Abu Dhabi's Persian Gulf coast, after a drone strike ignited a fire at the facility. On March 6th, shipping giant Maersk suspended all operations at Fujairah port. Meanwhile, across the wider region, Oman's deep water ports of Dukm, Salalah, and Sohar, which had offered another potential bypass route around the strait, were also struck by drones in March 2026, with at least one fuel storage tank in Dukm damaged. What Engineering News Record, a leading industry publication, concluded is extraordinary in its clarity. What is striking about Iran's targeting strategy is how precisely it maps onto the Gulf's bypass infrastructure. Iran has not simply closed Hormuz and waited, it moved immediately against the exit ramps. Iran understood exactly which infrastructure threatened its leverage, and it targeted it systematically.
GPS jamming, drone strikes, missile threats. Not random attacks, a deliberate campaign to neutralize every alternative route. This is not a military conflict. It is a geopolitical chess match being played out in pipelines, ports, and ocean corridors. Even amid the crisis, strategic thinkers inside and outside the UAE are pointing to something even bolder, a proposal that could permanently reshape Middle Eastern energy geography. According to a March 2026 analysis published in the Defense Horizon Journal, there is a 116-kilometer UAE corridor that could connect Sharjah's Port Khalid on the Persian Gulf coast to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. This corridor, whether built as a pipeline, a rail freight route, or an inland waterway, could become the world's only true multi-purpose bypass of the Hormuz choke point. The report argues that expanding this corridor, adding parallel pipeline capacity, accelerating the UAE's Etihad rail freight integration, and building strategic reserves at Fujairah are not long-term wish list items. They are emergency actions whose economic justification was already proven in the very first week of the Hormuz closure. The beauty of this corridor is its geography. The UAE is one of only 2 countries in the world, the other being Oman, that straddles both sides of the Hormuz choke point. Its western coast faces the Persian Gulf. Its eastern flank, led by Fujairah, faces the open Gulf of Oman, beyond Iran's reach. If the UAE builds this full cross-peninsula corridor, it would essentially be able to receive cargo and crude from the Persian Gulf on one side, transport it overland across its own sovereign territory, and export it from the other side, entirely bypassing Iran's ability to disrupt anything. This is not science fiction. The pipeline part of it, ADCOP, already exists and is already working. The question now being debated in boardrooms and government war rooms is how fast can we expand it? Let's zoom out to the global picture for a moment, because the numbers here are staggering. The International Energy Agency estimates that there is currently between 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels per day of available capacity to export crude out of the Gulf on alternative routes, mostly through the UAE's ADCOP pipeline and Saudi Arabia's East-West Petroline pipeline. Saudi Arabia boosted its Petroline to its maximum of 7 million barrels per day capacity on March 11, 2026, the first time it had ever operated at full capacity. But here's the cold, hard math. The Strait of Hormuz normally carries 20 million barrels per day. Even at maximum alternative capacity, the world can replace maybe 5.5 of those barrels via land routes. That means roughly 14 to 16 million barrels per day have simply vanished from global markets. That gap, that missing 14 to 16 million barrels, is why oil prices surged past $100 a barrel and touched $120. It's why Europe is facing what analysts are calling a jet fuel and diesel crisis. According to Arne Lohmann Rasmussen, chief analyst at Global Risk Management, roughly 30% of Europe's diesel imports and half of its jet fuel imports came from the Middle East entering 2026. Asia is bearing the brunt. China, India, Japan, and South Korea, which together accounted for 69% of all Hormuz crude flows in 2024, are scrambling to find alternative supplies, activate strategic reserves, and negotiate emergency deals. This is also about something beyond oil. The UAE has spent years positioning itself as the region's logistics, trade, and finance hub, home to Jebel Ali Port, Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest international airport, and now Fujairah as a critical energy node. All of that investment is paying off in the form of strategic indispensability. When the world needs a way around a crisis, it needs the UAE. That's not an accident. That's the result of decades of deliberate, patient, and enormously expensive infrastructure investment. If you found this video useful, share it. This is the story the world needs to understand right now. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think the UAE should do next. And subscribe, because we're going to keep following this story as it develops.